Hi, everyone. Welcome to Appliance Advisors with Yale Appliance. I'm joined as always by Dennis McDonald. How you doing this week, Dennis?
Doing great, Fran. How about yourself?
Very good, very good. We had a ton of really good questions last week, a lot of really good audience participation, so definitely hoping for the same this week. We're going to kind of jump right into it because we definitely have some questions from last week that we still want to get to. Again, really good questions, so we'll kind of start right off the bat. We didn't right into it with laundry. And, this is a question we definitely get all the time with laundry that is stacked one on top of the other. Inevitably at some point, one of those machines might need to be repaired or replaced. If you have a stacked laundry and one machine fails, do you have to buy both or can you replace just one? How does that work?
Yeah, so laundry historically lasts 7 to 10 years. That's an average life expectancy. It's certainly not perfect. Some brands, Miele as an example, might last much longer, but 7 to 10 is the running average. Dryers historically last longer than washers because washers take the real abuse. Having said all that, something dies. We have some people that it'll die 3, 4, 5 years in. And so the challenge is a few. Manufacturers in normal times, COVID being a little bit different, but in normal times are reproducing new lots of appliances. Almost like think about your Apple phone. You get a new software update. They have updates on the running average every 6 months to a year. So many times in that the physical chassis, the body could change in size. So one will not physically connect to the other.
Right.
In other times, sometimes even if we could make it work, we tell people, listen, say it was 5 or 6 years in and you want to replace it, your dryer's still working fine. And you're like, why would I buy a new one? Even if we could get them to fit, Murphy's Law is when we take them apart, something goes wrong with the other, or now more so, your washer lasts, your dryer lasts a couple more years, and now truly they make a whole new platform change. Now you're right back with the problem again.
Right.
Your washer isn't matching your dryer. So really, our stance has always been if it's not a truly a current model, and it was a next generation older machine, we will not replace a new washer with an old dryer, especially if the two aren't made to match together, because you're just asking for problems. You're probably spending good money after bad and having a bigger headache in the short while thereafter.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like you said, especially if it's one that truly are not compatible with each other, I mean, that is really a safety hazard too. Of, these, like we've talked about in the past, when we know these washer machines, they spin at such a high RPM that, if that dryer is not really properly secured on top of it, that absolutely is a safety hazard too.
For sure.
All right. So speaking of appliances needing service, what would you say what categories are the most serviced appliance categories?
Yeah, I mean, so for sure, we always start with ice makers, any type, under the counter, in the refrigerator, and most serviced would be in the door. So any of these refrigerators that have ice and water in the door, they're going to break. I hate to break everyone's heart. They will break. It's a matter of how often, if it's 6 months in, 6 years in, 1 year in, but there's just way too much going on. And we've even seen far more of that with the units that have the freezer on the bottom and the refrigerator up top.
Yeah.
And you're trying to have this little small box somewhere up in the upper refrigerated section that's warm, maintaining frozen ice and then dropping it through the door of the refrigerator. Yeah, definitely there. Certainly you see it on anything that has a lot of water and moving parts. So things like dishwashers, front load laundry, for sure, they take abuse. I mean, we're tough on them. Dishwashers, we leave food in there sometimes. It's asking it a lot to do. Use it very often, and laundry for sure. And definitely, I said it in the earlier question, but washers more than dryers, but certainly washing machines. The final thing, really kind of a rogue piece, would be coffee makers of any type. And even if you have a Keurig, they need to be descaled. They need to be maintained in order to extend their life. And more often than not, a lot of times homeowners just don't maintain them the way they probably should. So those would kind of be the more. What do you have? Do you have any, Fran? You must have.
No, I mean, I'd definitely say that's the majority. A lot of it, I was going to say, we talked about this before too, and even when Tim was on, a lot of it, we're not very good at maintenance and doing some of these little maintenance things. We kind of forget about it, cleaning this, descaling, like you said. I think part of that you know, the maintenance, and if you really take a look at the use and care guide and some of these things that they say that I can promise you 99% of us don't do, no, that certainly helps. But, you know, like we said in the past too, a lot of these appliances today, really, the vast majority are designed to last 7 to 9 years, and they definitely need more service. In our experience, definitely is the water, the moving parts, the use, front load laundry, ones like that, you know, refrigerators in general, especially with the ice makers. Absolutely. So, no, I think you nailed it.
Yeah, definitely. You know, we've gone so far as you know, coffee machines and ice makers, freestanding versions, the ones
Yeah.
you built in, because they're expensive, really expensive pieces. That we offer maintenance plans where we'll come out and we will do the cleaning and the replacing of the filters on a periodic basis that you can kind of set it and forget it for an annual fee. I think when you're spending that kind of money, if you're buying a built-in coffee machine, you're probably serious about coffee. You want it to work when it needs to. Same with ice makers when they're built in underneath the cabinet. Same is true. I think you really should strongly consider a maintenance plan if the dealer you're buying it from offers one.
All right, very good. And kind of again sticking with the service theme a little bit with the next question. You know, mold and front load washers obviously something we've heard a lot of. You know, do all front load washing machines get mold in the door?
No, no, they don't. Now, but that question is, can front load machines have mold or have they had a history of it? The answer to that is yes. So, you know, from first generation to second generation, third generation, you know, front load laundry now has been out quite a while, you know, 17, 18 years kind of thing, 20 years anyways, and more so in the European, the small stuff. But on the American side and us using them, you know, the mold, I always think about it like this. It's a warm, moist environment. And if you leave a door closed for a long period of time, especially when it's warm, a lot of times the water's warm, then it has the tendency to potentially have mold. Machines, a lot of times we got those calls from people that say, hey, maybe they're empty nesters, maybe it's a vacation home, maybe it's their main home, but they've gone on vacation. And before they left that wet, you know, they ran the washing machine, left that door closed and sat for a week, 2 weeks. Now they come back, they open it up, and wow, it smells, or they see some mold. It was a problem. Machines now, there's some machines out there that have a rinse on the door that will actually literally with a hot water rinse on the gasket of the door. Some have a fan that'll move air on the door. Brands like GE actually have a proprietary product that's called Microvan. That anything that touches water, even in the dispenser, at the door, you see it in a blue color. They've actually started to add that into things like dishwashers and those types of things. Really cool idea of mold resistant materials where water's going to have a tendency to maybe stand or sit for a while. So I think we've come a long way. I think some of it's user education, consumer education on how to use it. And then at the same point, I think the manufacturers have really stepped up their game and doing some things proactively to try to avoid it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, you know, one of those things like I said before, maintenance, but not necessarily maintenance, but tips, you know, just leaving the door open is massive. Yeah. Even if you have some of the machines that have the automatic detergent dispensers, it's kind of even just leaving that detergent tray when you're not using it open a little bit, just let some airflow. And that's kind of, you know, some of the benefits of front load obviously is kind of what causes that. They are locked in, they spin really fast. So obviously when those doors are shut, those are airtight shut. You know, you got to make sure that you're trying to get some airflow going through there on some of the machines that don't have those built-in features.
Yeah, and some even have a cleaning, you know, there's a product out there called the Fresh. There's some other products, but basically that's almost like a bleaching cycle that you could put your dishwasher or your wash machine, any of these types of things that have a tendency to get a smell or a mold through periodically on a routine maintenance to kind of keep it tip top.
All right, very good. So now let's go over to dryers a little bit. You know, there's always one question too, the old appliances versus the new ones. And I felt like my older ones used to do this better. So why don't my clothes today dry as well as they do versus my older dryer?
Yeah. So, you know, that question, it's two, right? So a lot of the washing machines today are smart washers, right? So, you know, before we used to have to turn the rotary knob, select the wash size, select the spin speed, select the soil level or the dirt level. Now these machines kind of, when you turn it to normal or you turn it to auto wash or to auto dry, these machines have sensors inside that actually sense the humidity or the moisture of the clothes and know when to shut it down. But in there, you'll see many times in their set cycle, when you say do a normal wash, it might say less dry, meaning there's options of more dry, less dry, damp. and you can override the machine, but as it's set setting, it might be a slight damp dry. So two things. We're used to machines that, and those are really smart machines. What we do know is the best way, or the European brands that really focus on the care of the clothes, I think a little bit more than Americans always had in a general sense. Even a brand like Miele, we think about them, they're a gold standard for the brand for washing. They almost want a slight damp dry, and the reason for that is less wrinkles. The wrinkles aren't set into the clothes, easier to fold, get a tighter fold, and the high heat was really baking the fabric of your clothes. So that's what was tattering your collars, making an extra large a large, or in my case, an extra large to a medium. Brand, that was a joke. I blame the shirt. I blame the dryer. It could be very well my eating habit. But we digress. The point was that these machines kind of really over dried.
Yeah.
Clothes. So now this idea of you're feeling it the way it really should be dried, you can you can exaggerate that and turn that up a little if you're not happy with how dry you particularly like it. The machines can do it, but many times it's going to think for you and do it slight damp dry just because they know that that's the way it should be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, we always talk about Miele kind of being that gold standard too in laundry. And we've talked to some of their engineers and things like that too. And we've had them in for training. And that's absolutely what they say. It's like, you really should never completely dry your clothes in the dryer. It's like it's not good for the fabric, like you said. It adds to wrinkles. So there's no question, definitely one of those American versus European things and kind of how we've always done it. If you really research it, you're absolutely right. That's really how the clothes should
yeah, I mean, if you think about when you're trying to release a wrinkle, what are you trying to do? You're trying to add moisture and put steam into it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you over dry your clothes, you're setting the crease into the clothes.
Yeah.
So to take it out slightly damp, when I say damp, I mean you can feel it. You're not going to put on and say, "Oh my God, my clothes are wet,"
right.
But it's slightly damp is really the right way to care for the clothes to look their best.
All right, very good. So let's move on to cooking now. And this was a question too we had from an audience member last week. So speaking of LP, liquid propane gas versus natural gas, how does that impact BTUs, and specifically on a Wolf 36-inch range, how does it impact that model?
Yeah, and I had answered that question quickly, trying to squeeze that in, if you remember last week in the final hour. It was a great question, and I don't know that I answered it entirely. So there's a lot of times where appliances come natural gas, and sometimes that's the only way they do come. And in order to get them to be able to use liquid propane, which is a thicker liquid gas, right? They need to be converted. And basically what that is this little orifice, or this pinhole that allows the gas to flow through at the burner itself, are a little bigger and smaller. That restriction, when we take a natural gas product built at the factory for natural gas and convert it to propane, you will have about a 10 to 15% reduction in power output. Okay. Now, I want to remind everybody, because we're Americans and bigger is better, right? We get hooked on the marketing material of the power of these burners. But if you had a bag full of money and had the nicest stove money could have bought 20 years ago or 25 years ago, when you were growing up per se, then a powerful stove burner might have been 8,500 BTUs. The burners today are 18,000, 15,000, 20,000 on a few of the burners at the very least. So it's all kind of relative. So I don't want to cause alarm and have people say, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to boil water." No, heck, you'll probably have a more powerful burner than you've ever had, even with the reduction, and never know that it was reduced. If you can order a product truly manufactured at the factory, meaning built for propane and specifically ordered that way when it comes in, then in 99% of the cases, there's no reduction in power. All the tubing, the orifices, everything is calibrated for the thicker gas. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's perfect. And like you said, at that point, the factory's built it specifically for LP, no restrictions, no nothing. So you're good to go. And that's exactly how the Wolf would come right from there.
Yep.
So,
yep.
All right. Next question we had last week was 30-inch electric ranges. Any thoughts on GE versus Frigidaire on models under 2000? We are starting to see some availability of those models too at big box stores.
Yeah, no, truth be told, we do not sell Frigidaire any longer. We did for a bunch of years. It's not even close. A GE is superior to a Frigidaire left, right, and center. Because the honest reality is, in most cases, aside from some aesthetic changes, the Frigidaire's we stopped selling 7 or 8 years ago is still the same Frigidaire's that are out there today. And GE is an entirely revamped company, line, product. So it's not self-serving just because we sell one versus the other. Feel them, open the doors, feel the quality, do your own research. I mean, it's not even close what consumers will say, you know. In many states, Frigidaire isn't even sold very well. In New England, it tends to be a brand a lot of people know, but it's really an older brand. You know, GE is definitely a more progressive brand these days. And that doesn't mean it can change because, you know, I mean, the one thing I'll also say is this business is cyclical, and upon major revamps of product, you know, someone can come out with this latest and greatest. Just they have been very long in the tooth to continue to re-innovate and stay on the forefront of any technology feature type of thing, whereas GE is just constantly at it to upgrade.
Absolutely. Very good. And sticking with cooking and kind of ranges, and you know, this question was on ranges specifically, but obviously for any cooking type, can you cover the differences between induction and electric? This is for a 30-inch range, but again, we can kind of cover them in general.
Yeah, I mean, so just induction versus electric is really as much the question. I mean, electric is something that people would replace if they had it. I would tell you 99% of any of us would not want electric. We have electric. We have to do electric again. The reason why you would or would not do induction absolutely will outperform electric and actually many gas products, hands down, top to bottom, all day, every day, regardless to your price point. Just the technology of induction versus electric is faster, safer, more efficient. I'll get into why. But electric ranges, if you think about a coil, and when we think back to the older style electric ranges, some people still have that coil type of an effect. It's what an electric range is today. There's glass over it, but the coil is set below the glass. It's really what it is. So if you think about it, it takes longer. The coils, while old and frustrating because you used to have to bang them to get them to work, after a while they wouldn't make a great connection. The reality of it was they were pretty quick to heat because the coil was right on the pan. With electric, its coil is now sunk below this thick glass. So it has to heat to the glass, and then it has to heat to the pan. What coils always did, and anyone that's had an electric stove is going to have their aha moment right here. You're boiling pasta. You got it right to a rapid boil. You're just about to put your pasta in, so you do it. And then the minute you go down to pasta, this thing cycles back down to what seems like a simmer. And then 2 minutes later, you come back and the pasta's boiling over because it's right back. Because what they do is they're made to cycle. They didn't hold a constant temperature. They went up, they went down. They went up, they went down. Additionally, in coil burners, electric stoves today, when we look at the burners, they're mapped out to have, say, maybe 9 inches or 10 inches or 12 inches of physical size. You see the ring on the glass if you were to buy a glass one, or even if you were to buy a coil. Many times you don't have the perfect pan to fit. So 2 things happen. Let's just say you have a 10-inch burner ring that's right on your range, and you put an 8-inch pan on there. Or you put a 12-inch pan because it's just what you have. So it's either overlapping or it's undersized. Even though some of these machines have the ability to size them down, any bit of the pan that creates reflective heat outside of the actual coil itself, if it's getting too hot, then that machine is made to cycle. Meaning that is when it ramps up. It gets hot, hot, hot. Oh, we're too hot. We got to cool down. And those peaks and valleys make cooking really, really difficult. Definitely. Induction looks the same, sunk under glass. Stove could look the same. The difference is this too. One strong consideration is to make sure you have the power at the breaker itself for when going from electric to induction, because induction requires more amperage. It is more powerful. Not the end of the world. Sometimes you have it. Sometimes you have to do an upgrade to your fuse, but it's just definitely something you want to make sure you consider and ask those questions and understand what you have at the fuse box in your house or at the outlet level. But the induction basically is a magnet. Think about it like that. And there's a magnet in a magnetron, or a magnet right set into the glass, and it picks up the ferrous metals or the metal qualities of the pan. That's why many times people say, "Oh, I need an induction rated pan." You need a high quality pan and that does not mean expensive anymore, because honestly, almost 95% of pans sold today have induction. It's almost like a flat screen TV. It used to be this really expensive thing. Now you couldn't buy a tube TV if you wanted. That's how pans are coming. So, but you want that quality, those metal qualities, because you really want to create friction. The magnet wants to try to grab the pan, and basically there's a friction effect that's happening. You don't see it. It used to be that you'd hear it sometimes on certain pans, but basically it is that high rate of friction that is creating the heat. So super safe. There are no coils. This magnetic element is only heating the amount of pan you put on it. So you don't have to size your burners anymore.
Yeah.
It's going to pick up the pan. If it's 6 inches and it's a 10-inch magnet, burner underneath there, it'll heat just the 6 inches. If it's 10 inches, it'll heat 10 inches. If it's 12 inches, it'll still continue to heat 10 inches on high. It doesn't worry about what's outside of it. It's just grabbing that metal quality and it's heating. And it's almost like a light switch, high to low, almost instant off and on. So a boil is extreme faster than any gas range you can buy. Even if you were going to buy a big Pro Wolf range, it's faster. Down to a low, it's very quick to go low because there is no coil, and there is no, when you cook on gas, like the cast iron burners and whatnot aren't retaining all that heat. There really isn't an element. There's magnet, it's friction, and there's this pan. There will be residual heat created, but it cools very quickly so that when you're about to boil over and you want to go to a simmer, it is, I kind of think of it like a light switch. It's almost that quick. So
it really is. I mean, it's instant too. That boil to simmer on induction is pretty instant.
So misnomers. You don't need expensive pans. There's a good chance yours will work. If you want to know if yours will work, hold a magnet to it. If a magnet sticks, you probably have a real good shot it works. Additionally to that, bring it to the store you bought it from. If you're still really nervous, if that pan is the pan you absolutely fell in love with and you have to have it, and make sure that it works, your store should probably have some live induction products that you can try it on, or a good store should. Second to that, so there's misnomer number one. Misnomer number two is that, induction, if you have an electric range or you can't do gas in your house, you're stuck and you can't cook well, induction absolutely will dominate gas in a lot of ways. And then beyond that, it's that induction has to be super expensive. It definitely does not. It is, again, I remember it's flat screen technology that came out 10 years ago, by the way. And it's been out far longer in Europe, but in the US market. And now you've just seen it's mainstream. It's almost harder to find an electric range today. You might have one or two options because everything's gone induction. Super fast, super responsive, super safe. It's not even close. Induction should be the way you go.
Yeah, so it sounds like a no-brainer. All I can envision too is, and you're talking about the electric, trying to get your water boiling over, you have all this ring that's heating up after. We all know what happens after. The water boils over, burns right on that electric cooktop, and it's never coming off, or it's very difficult. With induction, like you said, because it's only heating up the pot itself, so much easier to keep clean. People talk about electric being able to keep clean. Induction, it's far easier to keep clean than even electric.
God forbid, you have children. Sometimes you have aging parents in the home, and sometimes you get nervous so they get a little forgetful, and that's not everybody. But sometimes you have those scenarios where people say, I'm really nervous about who's cooking or if they'll leave the stove on. You can turn an induction burner on high, as long as there's not a pan there cooking on it, and you're not literally saying, I am going to cook on this. If it's turned on and there's no pan, guess what? There also isn't any heat. It doesn't turn on until a magnetic pan is placed on it. So super safe.
Yep, absolutely. Next question I know is one that you'll really enjoy. So, what are some appliances you can add into your kitchen layout and your kitchen plan to make it feel more high end, but without breaking the bank?
Yeah, I'll give you 4. There's 4. And when I say not breaking the bank, many times it's not any more money, but it's something to consider. A counter depth refrigerator versus a full depth refrigerator. Can still be your bottom French door or your side-by-side or whatever kind you want. But just the idea that it's tight with standard cabinets at 24 inches so that when you look, that's what the Sub-Zeros and those really expensive refrigerators always had going for it, was that it looked built in. You can do that now without any more money than your regular fridge. People would say, oh, but am I giving up space? No, you're giving up space where you buried food anywhere and it went bad. And if I would ask most people if they're really worried about space, they probably already have a second fridge or freezer outside. And, could they, at the expense of having a cleaner, higher end looking kitchen and a much easier flow, counter depth would be my first recommendation. The next one is if you can avoid not having to do the microwave over your stove. An over-the-range microwave, which is a fine application, and it's a lot of people. And it's one that 95% of us probably grew up having and probably still have today. But the idea of when you just change nothing, not a cabinet, not anything, but put a hood in place of where that over-the-range microwave goes, three things happen. You get a higher end look. You get far better lighting for cooking. It's a much better light product when it's a hood versus a microwave. And beyond that, you get far better ventilation performance. So now your challenge is, can you get a hood? Generally, they can be very inexpensive, and they can dress up your kitchen really, really quickly. And then beyond that, it's where can we put a microwave in the kitchen? And there's solutions for that, whether it's a microwave draw, so on and so forth. A lot of times people are saying, well, I'm nervous. I have this cabinet for this microwave to go up under. Well, what if you did a chimney hood? That cabinet that we hang to a microwave that's up there, we don't do anything with it anyway. Think about what it is. I want anyone that has that to think about that cabinet in their kitchen. It's a junk cabinet if it's anything. And you can't get to it because you got to reach way up high to get to it. It glorified holds the plug for your microwave, and it's some random stuff. Yeah. So what if
we hide the candy? We hide the candy from the kids up there.
You go. Yeah, that's true. Maybe alcohol back in the day.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. Yeah, you got little ones, but when they get to college, Fran, it might be fun. But my point is, if you put it up there, now you're doing a kitchen. You don't pay for that cabinet. There's a definite cost of installation and the cost of the cabinet. So could you get this thing, and it's not a functional cabinet, could you make the whole thing look different? That would be number 2. 3 would be just in the range yourself. If you have a freestanding range, the range that has the knobs in the rear, okay, and the clock in the rear, could you do a front controlled range, which just means the knobs are in the front, okay? Remember, I keep saying it. It's a flat screen tech TV. That front control effect used to be very expensive. It is not anymore. It's almost, like I said, 75% of the way ranges come today. So that one thing of not having that clock in the back of the stove that sticks up and have everything look nice and flat and clean really can make the whole thing seem a lot higher end. So, we added a hood, we removed the back. Wow, now this thing looks like it's not as squatty. Everything has some more feel to it. It's nice. And then the final simple thing is we talk about the depth of appliances. I talked about it with a counter depth refrigerator, but don't forget your dishwasher. So many times people are buying an American dishwasher. There's some good ones. KitchenAid's a decent dishwasher. GE, it makes a good dishwasher. LG, these brands. But they're American. And what we mean by that is American in physical depth. So brands like Bosch, Miele, Beko, there's Fisher Paykel. There's a bunch of brands out there where those dishwashers are totally flush with your cabinet. So when you look down the line, it sticks out deeper. The point I say to people is this. Many times, cabinets, a white set of cabinets, brand to brand, look pretty good. It comes down to a couple of the finishing details. It comes down to maybe the tile on the backsplash. It comes down to these small things on appliances that maybe when you walk in the kitchen, you don't appreciate and understand what you're seeing. You just walk away and say, that was a really nice looking kitchen. Yeah. So you can dress up really basic cabinets, excuse me, with these types of appliance suggestions and make them look and feel higher end. Yeah. Conversely, you can spend really good money on cabinets and not heed some of these advices and make really great cabinets look a little lower end. Yeah. So I think these are things. We're not talking breaking out your checkbook and writing, large amounts of money to have to do these things. These are negligible, if cost differential at all, just design type of things that are real simple and controllable.
All right, very good. Those are awesome tips. I think we have time for one more here. So the next question is going to be really kind of on disposal. So kind of talk about plumbing, and we sell disposals as well, and obviously a big part of a lot of kitchens. What's the difference? Some of the terminology that we hear. What's the difference between a batch feed disposal and a continuous feed disposal? And we'll go that one first. Now and then we'll get to the next part.
Yeah, so the common questions we get are that batch first, continuous. All that means is this. We've all maybe seen a disposal where you have to stick the plunger Okay.
Yeah,
The cover
exactly.
into the actual sink itself and turn that switch and turn it and rotate it
Mhm.
for it to engage. For the longest time, that was thought to be safe. For the longest time, that's what we did on islands when you didn't have maybe a backsplash to have a switch to flip.
Yeah.
Okay, this idea. So it was for two things, safety and that. Continuous feed means it needs a switch of some sort to turn it on. So if you had your choice, continuous feed would be what I would generally say. Now,
Mhm.
someone might say, are they safe? Well, at that point there, your child would be up on the counter, if that's worried about a child, flipping a wall switch, sticking their hand into the bottom. They could do it, I guess, but I think it's controllable
Mhm.
to teach them not to. And by the time they're probably tall enough to do all those things, maybe they know flip the wall switch would be the hope. But continuous feed have a longer life expectancy because the trend is people have just been shown to turn the water on, which you need the water to run before you turn on your disposal, and then go to the wall switch. As crazy as that is, a little Freudian thing they do.
Mhm.
Versus batch feed, which is we stick the plunger in and we twist it. Those have kind of come out of favor. If it's on an island, you see people use the continuous feed style. Okay, now they got to turn it
Mhm.
on somewhere, and they don't want to have to go to the lower cabinet and have a switch with wet hands in the lower
Right.
cabinet. So you see these things called air switches, which
Mhm.
is a small button we cut into the counter and we depress it. And when you do that, it actually engages the mechanism and flips the switch onto the disposal. It sounds really crazy, but it's generally a gulp of air that comes down this little small tube and flips the on button to the disposal. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
But continuous feed would be more often the way to go. Longer warranty. Little, you don't have to stick your hand into the dirty sink, kind of thing. And if you're nervous about children, this idea of an air switch, there's other ways to get around it to not have to do that. Now, the next question we get with that always
Yeah.
is there a septic safe version of all
Yeah.
of this to boot? And I always tell people this: listen, if the question's asking about you have a septic system, the honest reality is you shouldn't have a disposal. That's just the honest reality, because it's the proteins in food that actually break down the bacteria in a septic system that ends up. That's why a septic system fails. So things, proteins, food proteins, uh, meat proteins, really.
Mhm.
So what we say to people there is there's two technical. There's one by InSinkErator that sells an enzyme, okay? And it's a cartridge. And guess what? You got to keep buying this little cartridge. And guess what? It's not inexpensive.
Mhm.
And the idea is that it injects an enzyme, a bacterial enzyme, every single time you turn it on, and it gets rinsed out with the water that goes into your septic system and helps break down the proteins. Okay. Wow, that's amazing. It's all hocus pocus, and I would tell you, if you have to do it, then what you want to do is get probably a continuous feed or a disposal that has a high RPM spin speed with the stainless steel blade that pulverizes the protein. So you want the most powerful disposal you can get that can grind up your food. I mean, InSinkErator has them. I think their most powerful is right around 1750
Mhm.
RPM. You know, we sell InSinkErator, by the way. We sell our another brand of disposal that we have that spins closer to 2700 RPM a spin. And it's that faster spin that does two things. If you're gonna ask about the septic, it's gonna pulverize and break down that protein that much finer and smaller. And I think that's the better way to go if you're gonna do it at all. And then second to that, the faster spin speed gives you a lifetime warranty or a 10-year warranty, far better warranty than say an InSinkErator that spins 1,000 RPM less fast
Yeah.
and tends to bind. And that binding, one, breaks the machine, and also, guess what? Makes it loud. When food has to restrict and
Yeah.
slow down that blade, it's loud. When it's spinning so fast that it just rips right through it, you don't really hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. All right.
That's a
Very
lot.
good. That was a lot on. Yeah. I mean, listen, that was very good. So we went
You
through a
know?
lot of questions there today for sure. So that was great. We're looking forward, obviously, to some audience participation, some more questions for next week. We got to, I think, all of them this week. So let's definitely, any questions that you have here afterwards, we'd love to answer those for next week as well. And we'll see you next Thursday at 4:00 on another episode.
Sounds great. Have a good Memorial Day, everybody. Good Memorial Day, friend.
Happy Memorial Day. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you guys later.
Take care.